Hari Om. Let's start with the prayer. Om Samasta Jana Kalyani Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahma Vidvaram Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanura Mardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Bande Jagadgurum Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vidya Dravidam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Amadeva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Gurudeva Deva. Hari Om. We are doing the Panchadashi, 8th chapter, Kutastha Chaitanyam, Kutastha Deepa Chaitanyam. Essentially, Kutastha Deepa Prakaranam, analyzing the nature of or difference between the general Kutastha Chaitanyam or Sakshi Chaitanyam and Chidabhasa, the reflected consciousness. So, how do I separate? So, you can separate from this to this. It's not easy to separate like that because you cannot physically separate. So, the example I gave is looking at my hand. So, there are two things here. One is the general light, because of which you are able to see the hand. So, without the light, you cannot see the hand. So, there is a general light that makes visible not only the hand, all objects also. At the same time, that general light that is falling on the hand is getting reflected by the hand and reaching your retina. And therefore, there are two lights here. One is the general falling light and also reflected light. I cannot distinguish, looking at my hand, I cannot distinguish what is the original light and what is the reflected light, because these two are as though together, so inseparable. So called the physically I cannot separate it. I have to use intellectually, using the vichara and inquiry, that there is a general light which is illumining this hand, that hand, that hand, and only the reflected light from the hand makes the knowledge of the hand. If the light is not reaching, reflected light is not reaching the eyes, then you won't get the knowledge of the hand. So here, in fact, that's going to be discussed in terms of the knowledge wise. So we are analyzing the sloka 7 again. So Ajñāto Brahmana Abhyaso Jñāta Kumbhastata Nakim Jñātatva Janani Naiva Chidabhasa Parichayaha. So this part, I am knowing it only because of the reflection of the consciousness, which is general consciousness, by the vritti that is formed, and that's where Chidabhasa get magnified in terms of the knowledge of the object. So now, when is Chidabhasa not there? Question is that whenever the object is there, is the Chidabhasa. Whenever there is a thought is there, then the specific reflection or magnified reflection is occurring, because I know this thought, I know this thought, I know this thought, and so on. And when is the mind without any thoughts? We said in the deep sleep state there is no mind or there is no thoughts in that. So therefore, whenever the thought rises, the objective that this is a pot arises, and spontaneously I know this is a pot also arises. That's where the fruit of ownership, that I am a knower of this, I am a knower, this is a known. So with respect to known, I am a knower. So knower arises along with when the thought arises. Knower is not another vritti, as we said, because the knower is only an ownership coming from the general mind, because the mind says, I am the knower. When the mind is serene, when there is no particular thought arising in the mind, then there is no objective knowledge, because there is no thought rising, there is no Chidabhasa, a special Chidabhasa that is illumining the thoughts, and therefore there is no knowledge of knower also, knowership is also not there. So therefore there is a subject-object duality is also not there. subject-object duality arises because the contents of the vritti is an object outside, whereas the rest of it is a general, and therefore is a general reflection, general Chidabhasa. So you can say general Chidabhasa, general reflection, and because of, since it's not magnified, we say only Kutastha Chaitanyam. Kutastha Chaitanyam point, there is no reflection. So only for the differentiating the general background versus the specific background of the magnified thought, we are separating this as a Kutastha Chaitanya, or at least Vidyaranya is separating, that is a Chidabhasa and that is a Brahma Chaitanyam. And whenever Chidabhasa is there, knowledge of the object is there. In the deep sleep state, there is no subject-object duality, so therefore it is pure mind. So pure mind is there in the deep sleep state, but no knowledge also there. What is there is essentially what I went through, because I want to sleep, I want to sleep, I want to sleep. Therefore, that sleepness that is essentially continuous all the way through that. And what is the nature of that? There is no objective knowledge, therefore there is no Thula Vidya. And what is there is, we call it a Karana Sarira in the deep sleep state, is nothing but all the particular, the koshas and everything is folded in the quiet mind, because pranamaya, the annamaya goes to pranamaya kosha, pranamaya kosha goes to manomaya kosha, manamaya goes to vijnanamaya kosha, and vijnanamaya kosha folds itself, and that's what is called anandamaya kosha, only because there is no subject-object duality, and therefore one is peaceful. Because any duality causes a problem. Therefore, Ditiyadyo Bhayam Bhavati is a scriptural statement, because any duality says I am and he is, and therefore we have problems. So this calmness, quietness of the mind, the deep sleep state, is called the Anandam, is a reflected happiness coming from the quietness of or absence of subject-object duality. So there also what is there is pure mind, and Chidabhasa is there. What if I don't have the self-knowledge, then I am still ignorant, so therefore Mula Avidya is also there. So Mula Avidya, therefore one is ignorant is criteria is that it is an absence of the particular knowledge, and therefore one is no particular objective knowledge is there. I am ignorant of this, I am ignorant of everything, and that's why in the deep sleep state what I say, where are you? I don't know. What did you do? I don't know. I don't have concept of time, and I don't have concept of space. So even time and space comes along with the Chidabhasa magnified, because whenever I see an object and one object is separated by other object, therefore I am seeing simultaneously 2 points, and that becomes a space. And when I see two objects in sequence, and that becomes a time. So time and space arise with the Chidabhasa, with the magnified Chidabhasa, when I am awake in the waking state or a dream state. So these thoughts keep rising both in the waking state and the dream state. I can suppress the thought by yoga, and that's what is called samadhi. So what happens to samadhi? Samadhi is also nothing but is not different from, it's a quiet mind where pure consciousness is only reflecting, and this is general Chidabhasa, and which also we call it general Sakshi or general Chaitanyam or Brahma Chaitanyam. But I am that Brahma Chaitanyam is also not there. So Samadhi is not a knowledge. Samadhi is just a ignorant person going into Samadhi. He will not realize anything. He will be an ignorant, quiet mind. A knowledgeable person goes into the Samadhi, a knowledgeable, quiet mind. So knowledge or ignorance remains, and the knowledge has to be gained by Chidabhasa only, because any knowledge we need a Chidabhasa. So these things need to be clear, because there are a lot of confusion in the literature. Says how does self-realization occurs, because a lot of people misinterpret Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi's the statements, some he gave in answers to questions, and they used that as an example or to say what Bhagavan said. But Bhagavan answered to the particular person in a particular context, and that cannot be applied across the board for everything, and that's where the problem is. That's why one has to have a sampradaya, a methodology of teaching, and also a thorough understanding of Vedanta in order to understand the absolute truth. So here, quietened mind is not a realized state. That has to be clear. And people say objectless awareness. What is objectless awareness? There is no chidabhasa. That means the mind has become quiet. And that's not a knowledge also. Because there is no objectless awareness is what? This is just Samanya Chaitanyam is there. That's there all the time. Even with the objects also it is there. But I am not able to pay attention to recognize that I am, that is not there. Still, I am taking only I am this, this, this. That ignorance remains until I realize my true nature. So, samadhi is not is neither necessary or sufficient for self-realization. What will help samadhi is, once I have a knowledge, then I can be reveling in myself with the constant thought that Aham Brahmasmi. Whereas in this deep sleep state, I am also resting quietly, but with the thought, I don't know anything. So, Mula Vidya is there in the deep sleep state. I can have a Mula Vidya in the Samadhi if I don't have the proper knowledge. So, any knowledge here is going to say, any knowledge takes place through Vritti Jnanam. Vritti Jnanam means the Chidabhasa, emphasized Chidabhasa has to be there, and therefore the even self-realization occurs by a pramana. Whenever there is a pramana, there is a knower-known duality is there. But in the case of Brahma Vritti, as we are going to talk in the next few slokas, that there is no phala vyapti, because there is no phalam as a result of the pramana. We will come to that later. Here, Jnatattva Janane Naiva, we are looking at the seventh mantra, seventh verse. Ajñato Brahmano Vyasaha Jnata Kumbhastadha Nakim. So when you say, when there is no part, part is there but I am not seeing it, or I have not formed a vritti in that, then, or even vritti is there but the consciousness say has not illumined the vritti, then I have only ignorance. So when there is no thought, what is there? When there is no pot, there is a general light. So just as when there is no spotlight on the wall, there is a general light. And the general light here is the absence of spotlight. Spotlight gives you knowledge of particular spot. So whenever the Chidabhasa and the Vritti forms, I know this is a pot. When I look at the chair, I know this is a chair. So chair knowledge or a pot knowledge or any other knowledge of any object occurs through vritti, through the thought process. And without the pot knowledge, what was there? General knowledge. That means there is no specific knowledge of the pot, so it is called ignorance, ignorance of the pot. So who has the knowledge of the ignorance? If you say the ignorance is general, therefore it is a Sakshi Chaitanyam. So this is all he differentiating here. He is using a word, the ignorance is being illumined by Sakshi Chaitanyam. Knowledge, only particular knowledge, this is part is illumined by Chidabhasa. When the Chidabhasa arises, also there is another, I am a knower of this spot, that is again back into the Sakshi Chaitanyam. So you have to differentiate these things here. I'm going into more detail because it's a lot of technical confusion here. So whenever I see an object, a thought forms. Thought is a vritti. It's being illumined specifically by the reflected consciousness because it's made up of subtle matter. So when it is reflected, then it is knowledge of the thought. There is a phalam occurs because there is a pramana and the prameyam is there, and therefore there is a prama. Prama is a knowledge of the thought. But this is a pot, this is a chair, that is a knowledge of particular vrittis. Also spontaneously we said from the Sakshi there is a no vritti, but spontaneously a ownership of that I am a knower of this pot. I know this is a pot, I know this is a chair, that arises spontaneously, where not in the Chidabhasa, in the background mind. In the background mind is a Chidabhasa, but it's not a dominant one now. It is the pure Kutastha Chaitanyam, and we call it essentially the Sakshi Chaitanyam, Sakshi Jnanam. This is only figuratively Sakshi Jnanam, because from the point of Sakshi there is no reflection, nothing of that sort. So as long as this reflection, we have to understand these levels of communication here. So Jnatattvam Janani Naiva. So Jnatattvam means knowingness of, this is knowingness arises, Chidabhasa Parichayaha. So once the knowingness has arose, then the thought is gone, then the end of the particular reflection. So Chidabhasa Parichaya means the Chidabhasa disappears as though, so appearance to be dissolved back into this one. So Chidabhasa doesn't appear completely. Chidabhasa of the thought disappears. So you have to be very careful, because Vidyaranya is using in a general statement, but from our point, without Chidabhasa, we said there is no life. Mind has to be there, and whenever the mind is there, Chidabhasa is there. We are talking about particular Chidabhasa, which is in the form of vritti, gets dissolved back into the, because from the pot, when I look at the chair, pot thought is gone. Therefore, Chidabhasa of the pot thought is also gone. That's what he means here. So Chidabhasa Parichayaha. So the dissolution of the Chidabhasa of that particular vritti also not there. So you have to understand the two levels of Chidabhasa here. That's what I want to make sure that we understand clearly. Now with that knowledge, we can, before I go, I need to talk about how the science understands. So here we are talking about, we said, Vedanta, which forms the Mimamsa theory of perception, is the mind along with the senses is grasping, and grasping is nothing but forming a vritti, and the senses will get the reflected attributes of the object, and that's what the contents of the vritti, which is being illuminated by consciousness, called Chidabhasa, reflected consciousness. In the case of, but that's how the Vedantic, not even Vedantic, that's how Mimamsic position, which Advaita Vedanta adopts it, because that was the knowledge at that time. Now, according to the objective sciences, that's not the way things, mind will not go there, but what happens is the light falls on the object and gets reflected, and the reflected light coming through the eyes, forming an image in the retina, and that will be transmitted through optical nervous system, and the optical nervous system becomes a neurons, and that's where the objective science ends. But up to that, we know. Then somehow, quote unquote, somehow a thought arises in the mind. So vritti arises. So from the vritti on, the same theory, because the objective scientists have no tools. But up to this point, we have to follow the objective sciences, because that's what it is. So we don't have to reject the objective sciences, but adopt wherever that can be validated, because if the eyes are not properly, if the retina is not problem, if the cataract is problem, then mind may go senses, but our senses are not properly do. So all these things have to be a problem. And also what I am seeing is only a frontal projection. When you are looking at my hand, the light coming reflected by the hand is reaching your retina, but light behind my hand is not, because that light is not reaching your retina. So only frontal projection of the light that is coming only you are seeing. So this is what we see, and I don't see backside. Even if the mind is going to grasp it, how does it grasp? So these are the problems of grasping the object and all that. And even in the cases of the taste and the touch, the object's mind doesn't have to go anywhere. The object has to come and touch. So in those cases, the object is coming into the mouth and touching my tongue, and the sense of touch, there the knowledge is taking place. So we have to change, even according to Mimamsa, when it comes to taste and touch and where the object come into contact with directly with the senses there, without mind going there. You can say mind going up to the tongue and then grasping the object. So that's only figurative statements one can apply, but in principle we know that of the object, the mind doesn't have to go, the mind information can be brought in through the senses, and that's what the optical nervous system, up to neurons, objective scientists say. That's what computers also do, or computer technology also does. Or what does it do? We are only typing, pressing buttons, but pressing buttons is nothing but electrical signal. Electrical signal is transmitted, and is only plus minus signs according to some. So it is converted into software by a program language. So programming language or programming code is required to convert the gross matter, which is electrical signal. Electrical signal is also gross only from our point, into software that which we call a thought. So a program language or code is been put in by the Paramatma, by the Ishvara. So Lord has put in a programming language to convert the hardware into software spontaneously. You cannot decode it, you cannot change it, and we don't know what it is even. So, but that is the wonder of all wonders, how knowledge takes place, how thought rises, and what is a thought. So we have discussions on what is the mind, what is the thought. So the physicists are trying to analyze what is the mind, and they say we can't see God, therefore there is no God. We can't see even thought also. Do we say that we don't know thought? We say they are, in fact they have to say by thinking only that there is no God. They have to use thinking, and they have to use the mind. But what is the mind? Is it a matter, or does it matter? Is it psychologists have theories? The philosophers have theories, because this is not an objective tool to analyze. So you have to develop some kind of theory to account. But Vedantic, according to Vedanta, it is also a matter, subtle matter, because it is the mind that travels from one place to next loka and all that, and we have a vasanas and all, everything is being exhaustively treated, and we have a law which is called dharma. Dharma is the law at the mental level, law at the moral level. Moral is not at the law of I'm sorry, even in the man-made laws also has to be obeyed by the mind. So you have to pay taxes is a law of the country, and if you don't pay, you get to be punished, and that's called legal laws. But the moral laws, where the one has to help, one has to do, one has not hurt, one has, all these things become a moral laws also, and that becomes you are responsible for that, and that's how the punyam, papam, all that comes into picture. And I am being born because of the moral laws only. They're called dharma. Dharma, adharma exists, from which I take a birth depending upon my prarabdha karma. Karma and dharma becomes related. So in the Karma Kanda, in the Jain, it says Atato Dharma Jignasa, because dharma comes with the karma also. Okay, now Jnatattva. So from the science point, we end up to neurons, but there has to be a program code that converts into thought, and from the thought again the same Chidabhasa, everything, because objective sciences have no tools. Then from then on, the Vedantic and the science have to merge in, because science have no tools to analyze it. So we have to follow Vedantic analysis in order to understand, or a Mimamsa. Mimamsa, inquiry of Vedanta is called Mimamsa, not inquiry of some crime is not Mimamsa. This is a Vedantic inquiry is called, word Mimamsa is used. So Jnatattva janani naiva chidabhasa parikshayaha. So here he is talking about the dissolution of chidabhasa when the thought of the object goes back. After knowledge is taking place, the thought is gone. So our knowledge takes place immediately, spontaneously, as soon as the Chidabhasa reflection occurs. The reflection of the Reflection occurs as soon as thought arises. So I know the thought immediately as the thought rises. Not that I have to wait for it, because the very thought raising itself, there is a reflection always, because the original light is pure consciousness is there. So reflection or the thought is raising in consciousness only. That's how one has to look at it, because there is no separate reflection for it, waiting for reflection, some light different from the thought. It is raising in the consciousness, it is engulfed in the consciousness, and now that raising consciousness gets reflected. Reflection occurs because it's a subtle material only. So thought arises, and when the thought subsides, the knowledge already occurs spontaneously that this is a pot and I know this is a pot. This is a chair, I know this is a chair, or I know this, automatically arises the knowership along with the known object knowledge also. So knowership and unknowership, ignorance as well as the knowledge of occurs in the Kutastha Chaitanyam. Okay, next we go to 8. We did that, but now with the clear understanding we can analyze the slokas again. Jnatatva janani naiva, jnatatva janani naiva, chidabhasa parikshayaha. That's a last statement in the previous one. So there is after the knowledge takes place, the thought goes away and another thought arises when I see another object. Now sloka 8 we chant again. Abhav sahanaya buddhya, abhav sahanaya buddhya, jnatatvam naiva janyati, jnatatvam naiva janyati, traduk buddhir visheshaha kaha, traduk buddhir visheshaha kaha, mudade syat vikarinaha, mudade syat vikarinaha. Together, abha sahanaya buddhya, jnatatvam naiva janyati, traduk buddhir visheshaha kaha, mudade syat vikarinaha. So, abhasana, without the reflection of the consciousness in the thought is nothing but inert. It is just like here he says it's inert like the matter, mruda, the mud and so on and so forth. But there is a difference between the mud and the thought. Thought is a subtle material compared to gross. So the idea is that thought is raising in the mind. It's only modification of the mind. Mind itself is a subtle matter. Therefore, mind itself is inert, and therefore thought by itself is inert. What makes the mind alive? It is a reflection of the consciousness. What makes the thought, knowledge of the thought? It's because of the reflection. Without the Chidabhasa, the mind as well as the thought are dead matter only. But it will not happen because consciousness is always there and mind is there as long as the Jiva is there, Jiva notion is there. Jiva notion is there as long as one has not realized that Aham Brahmasmi. So all that has to be understood. Here he is only talking about particular thoughts, therefore magnified consciousness. So Abhasahanaya Buddhya. Buddhya is a particular thought rising in the buddhi. So the existence of the buddhi, and without the reflection of the consciousness by the thought, so abhasahanaya, abhasa means the thought without the reflection of the consciousness, the buddhya, jnatatvam naiva janyate. There is no knowership of that thought or the object, because thought is nothing but the reflection, the transformation as though of the object out there. Object out there as though transformed subtly in the mind as a thought in the mind. So if I don't know if there is no reflection of the consciousness of the thought, then I have no knowledge of the object also. So jnatatvam naiva janyate, traduk buddhe visheshaha kaha. So traduk buddhe, without reflection of that, there cannot be any knowledge of the thought, and it's also dead. And it says kaha mudeda syat vikarinaha. So kaha visheshaha syat So what is the speciality of that without the reflection? It is nothing but mudaham. It is mudadehe. It is less like a mud only. Mud is like an inert material here. And so unless the reflection occurs, there is no knowledge. And not only there is no knowledge, the only thought by itself is called a dead matter only, because it's nothing but made up of subtle matter in contrast to gross matter like a mud. So now we go to 9. Jnata ityuchyate kumbhaha. Jnata ityuchyate kumbhaha. Mrudalipto na kutrachit. Mrudalipto na kutrachit. Dhimatra vyapya kumbhasya. Dhimatra vyapta kumbhasya. Jnatatvam nishyate tada. Jnatatvam nishyate tada. Jnatatvam is knowerness. Knowerness of the pot. So kutrachit here is giving an example. Is there a place where the mud is as though painted with the mud, a pot, and with that can have a real pot? There cannot be. In the same way, we have just a thought, we cannot have a knowledge. So he's giving an example in the form of a mud, which is mudalipyato kutrachit. So mudalipya kumbha, a pot smeared with the mud, and kumbhaha jnata ityuchyate kumbhaha. So anybody talks, is it called, the one calls it as a pot at all? So kutrachit, anywhere. Mudalipya kumbhaha, the pot smeared with the mud. Jnata iti na uchyate. So it cannot be said that there is a thought there. Thought doesn't arise by looking just a simple mud, painted mud. Something like that. You cannot have a smeared mud. Smeared mud is not a pot. That's what he says. Dhimatra vyapta kumbhasya. So in the same way, the dhimatra means only vritti that's formed on the of the pot cannot be called jnatatvam naishyate. Knowledge is not possible just by having a vritti. So just by having a simple painting of that, you cannot call it a pot. Same way, you cannot call it a pot knowledge if by having just a vritti. Without chidabhasa reflecting, there cannot be a knowledge. That is the bottom line here. Now number 10. Jnatatvam nama kumbhe. Jnatatvam nama kumbhe. Tatchidabhasa palodayaha. Tatchidabhasa palodayaha. Na phalam brahma chaitanyam. Na phalam brahma chaitanyam. Manat pragapi satvataha. Manat pragapi satvataha. So here jnatatvam nama kumbhe. So jnatatvam, the knowerness of this kumbha is a pot. Pot is essentially when the reflection of the consciousness by the chidabhasa, when it occurs, the knowledge occurs by the chidabhasa by reflection. Without that, it is just no revelation of the pot, and therefore there cannot be any thought. So atha, therefore kumbhe chidabhasaha palodayaha. So knowledge of the occur only because of the chidabhasa, reflected consciousness. So here a fundamental statement is being made. Any knowledge has to be occurring by, number one, a vritti has to be formed, and the vritti has to be illumined by the consciousness to get reflected consciousness. That's how the knowledge occurs. In the case of the pratyaksha pramana, there is a pramana, a means of knowledge, has to know that prameyam. Prameyam is depending upon the nature of the object, a proper pramana has to occur. For an object to see, eyes pramana, the sense of sight has to operate. For the hearing things, sense of hearing pramana has to operate. For taste, the eyes will not do, the ears will not do, sense of taste has to operate. In the same way, all sense of touch and sense of smell, all these things have to operate in order for the knowledge to take place. And knowledge will take place only by formation of the vritti, and the formation of vritti has to be illumined by Chidabhasa, by reflected consciousness. So without the reflected consciousness, without the reflection of the vritti, and without the vritti there, all this cannot happen. So in general, that for any knowledge to take place, several things. One is, there has to be an object of knowledge, prameyam, and there has to be means of to reveal that prameyam. That means appropriate means. So for, as we said, for to see, I need an appropriate means of seeing. That means eyesight should be there, and the mind should be, I have sense of faculty of seeing should be operating. It's not the eyes, it is the eyesight, which is sense of sight, has to operate and working in the 20/20 vision, or 20 depending upon the nature of the sense of sight. So the prameyam and pramanam and pramata will be there through object of reflection. Chidabhasa has to form, and prama will take place. Therefore, all things are required for any knowledge. This is not only for objective knowledge, for any knowledge of objectifiable entity. And how about Brahma Vidya? So in all these cases, knowledge of the object and pramana, prameyam, and prama, knowledge is phalam. And phalam will occur as soon as the reflected consciousness engulfs that, and that's what is called phalavrutti. Vritti vyapti, that means formation of the vritti, and automatically the reflection of that vritti by the Chidabhasa, and therefore revelation of the vritti as this is a part, this is a chair, will occur, and that's called phalavyapti. And therefore, in all objective knowledge, there is a vritti vyapti and phalavyapti automatically. What about the self-knowledge? This is where a lot of theories and a lot of confusion also. So, Vedanta says, tad vijnanartam sa gurum eva abhigachet, and it says srotavyaha, mantavyaha, nididhyasitavya. You have to listen. Listen through what? Through the sense of hearing. So if the senses of hearing is not operating, there is no point in going to a teacher. So go to a teacher and listen. Listen what? Listen to the Shastram. So it is a Shastra Pramana, Shabda Pramana. And what is he going to tell? About what we are talking about pointing something that is absolute truth, which cannot be pointed otherwise, through a process. So the Vritti Jnanam, because whenever he is teaching, I have to have a thought process. So tad vijnasasva, you say inquire, vicharam. Vichara involves thought process. So thoughts are required. It's not beyond the thought. The thought beyond thought, it's not just thought, but thought knowledge is required, and thought knowledge occurs through Chidabhasa. Therefore, even Vedanta has to be learned through Shravanam and Mananam, reflection, through Vichara, inquiry, and inquiry requires a thought process. So self-knowledge involves a thought process. But result is not, and that's what he's pointing out in the next line. We say he's taking a detour here. He says to make sure that na phalam Brahma Chaitanyam. Brahma Chaitanyam, the knowledge of the Brahman or the consciousness of the Brahman cannot be objectified. It is the very subject that you are. Subject is, what is the definition of subject? Subject is that which cannot be objectified. So how do I know? I don't need to know. Once I remove through Vedanta Shravanam, that Shravanam and that Pramana removes the ignorance about myself. I am this, I have a notion, I am not this, and I am that, where all this has to be excluded, because this is all nothing but inert, and I am a conscious entity. Vedanta is trying to point out me to think back, inquire what is my nature, and that is self-revealing, because I am eternally present and I need not be objectifying myself as I am this. All that becomes important. There is a vritti vyapti, no palavyapti in the case of Brahma Vidya. Brahma Vidya requires vritti vyapti, vichara. So don't say you have to go beyond the mind. You have to go beyond the mind, you go to sleep. And samadhi, what about the samadhi? Samadhi without the knowledge is ignorant samadhi. With the knowledge, it is revelation in your own self, using the knowledge only. That's why the Shrotavya, Mantavya comes nididhyasanam. The samadhi aspect comes after knowing what is to be known through Sravana Manana. All this is implied. That's why one has to be very crystal clear. What is the self-knowledge? Who knows the self-knowledge? What are the means? And all that is being analyzed. How does it differ from objective knowledge? And all that is also to be known. And with this, we'll come back and clarify some of the concepts so that this is very technical, epistemological analysis is being presented. And Vidyaranya using some way is presenting, and that may be confusing to some unless we know what is clear and understanding, and with that knowledge we can interpret properly what Vidyaranya says. Because Vidyaranya himself clarifies later, but when we read the verses, there is a chance that we misunderstand what Chidabhasa disappear means. There is no Chidabhasa. It's not that. The general Chidabhasa is there, general reflection is there, and the special one that arises with the vritti is not there. General light on the wall is there because there is the sun in the sky. He already said there is a sun in the sky. The sunlight is falling on the wall to reveal. That is the mind that is being revealed. That sunlight has to be there. In the same way, Chidabhasa, reflection of the general light, is also there. We'll come back to this. We'll stop here. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.